Founder of the Chicago Center for Leadership and Transformation and author of Unapologetic, a Black, Queer, and Feminist Mandate for Radical Movements.
Everyone, good morning. Okay, the mic is on. Good morning, everyone. I am very small and this podium is very tall, so we're going to make this work as best as we can. So I'm very excited to be here with you all, and I'm going to share a dispatch from the front lines in the United States of America. On May 21st, 2015, people in over 14 cities across the United States of America participated in the first Say Her Name Day of Action led by the Black Youth Project 100, BYP 100, the Black Lives Matter Global Network, and the Movement for Black Lives. That day, the organization I helped co-found, BYP 100, led an action at the Chicago Police Department calling for the firing of police officer Dante Servin. He killed then 22-year-old Rekia Boyd on the west side of Chicago. And we called for his firing. That day, people in over 14 cities, as I mentioned, took action for the first time, calling for the ending of state-sanctioned violence against Black women, girls, and femme-identified people. Nothing like that had ever happened before. We were organizing in a moment where many people were proclaiming Black Lives Matter and many other people were not seeing themselves in the fight. So we said that we're going to take this moment to lift up how state-sanctioned violence, in particular policing, impacts us. Because we know that until all of us are free, none of us are free. Our front lines are everywhere. The ongoing struggle for Black liberation has no borders, no single language, and no single leader, and no single organization. Our struggle is multidimensional, just as our lives are. As Audre Lorde says, there's no such thing as a single-issue struggle because we do not live single-issue lives. We are actively building insurgencies for collective liberation rooted in the values of love, justice, and being in right relationship with each other and the land we live on. In my home city of Chicago, the Chicago Police Department receives nearly 40% of our public service budget. That's nearly $4 million a day. How many of you have heard a story about Chicago in the news? All right? So tell me where else can you make a $4 million investment a day where you have no return and you continue to get the money, right? You get it when the service that you provide is actually a service of surveillance, a service of control, and a service that keeps communities in disarray, that also keeps communities divested from when we should be divesting in public housing, mental health care, public education, and quality jobs. In 1 year, our so-called and soon-to-be former progressive mayor, Rahm Emanuel, closed 51 public schools. 51 in 1 year. 97% of the students who attended those schools are Black students. In that same time period, just before that time period, between 2000 and 2010, we lost nearly 200,000 Black people from the city of Chicago. And unlike the Avengers, they didn't just vanish into thin air. They moved. They were displaced. They were pushed out. I am a graduate of Chicago Public Schools. And frankly, I don't want to imagine what 9-year-old Charlene would have felt like if seemingly overnight her school disappeared. And that is what's happening to our children. The image behind me today, as you all can see, hopefully everyone can see it, is of Black children standing outside of a jail in Maryland where their mother was incarcerated. They are gathered there with other Black women and people participating in the National Black Mama's Day bailout. That group was there to bail out the women, the woman in particular, because she could not afford to pay the fee. And I'm not sure if you all have pretrial detention here in Canada, But in the United States of America, on any given day, over 700,000 people sit and are encaged and locked in jails because most of them cannot afford the fee to get out. They have not been found guilty, they have not had a trial, but they languish in jail. So the National Bailout Collective of Black organizers are actually actively working to end pretrial detention by uniting families and ending systems of incarceration. Yeah. I was told that this wasn't a problem in Canada, that mass incarceration wasn't the same thing here. But to be clear, when we talk about ending the prison industrial complex, which is defined by critical resistance, it is a term we use to describe the overlapping interests of government and industry that use surveillance, policing, and imprisonment as solutions to economic, social, and political problems. This is not just a problem that's on the other side of the border. This is a problem across the world. It is being exported. It is a web that lives and grows across the world. And my work in the US is about understanding that the front lines in Chicago are connected to the front lines in Gaza. The front lines in Chicago are connected to the front lines in Hebron. The front lines in Chicago are connected to the front lines in Ramallah. The front lines in Chicago are connected to the front lines in Palestine. Our front lines are in Cape Town. Our front lines are in Toronto. Our front lines are in Rio de Janeiro. Our front lines are global. And as Fannie Lou Hamer said, until all of us are free, none of us are free. That's our work. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Charlène. Notre prochain invité, le président d'Unifor, Jerry Dias, est au premier plan de la lutte pour les droits des travailleurs et travailleuses, pour l'égalité et pour la justice sociale.
Good morning. Like Charlene, I am very short and the podium is very tall, so I'm not going close to it. November 25th, 2018, I received a phone call from CTV asking me what my response was to the announced closure of the General Motors plant in Oshawa. The only flaw with the question is we hadn't been notified that they are closing the General Motors plant in Oshawa. So from that phone call to the subsequent conversations with General Motors to here today, we had launched one heck of a campaign to get General Motors to change their minds. Between the Golden Globes, the Academy Awards, Leaf Games, Vancouver Canucks games, the dreaded Montreal Canadian games, the Super Bowl, where I'd like to thank the lawyers that work for General Motors for initiating injunctions to prevent us from showing that ad. Because what they did by putting forward those injunctions is they bought us the type of media coverage that you can only receive from sheer stupidity. Because anybody that thought that somehow we would pull an ad based on the threats of the lawyers really has something different coming to them. We had wildcat strikes at the Oshawa assembly plant, wildcat strikes at the supplier base. We blockaded GM's headquarters. We did everything we could to get their attention, and then a gift. I was contacted by rock star Sting and his team that was launching in Toronto the last ship. And the last ship, once I spent some time with Sting and the crew, was actually about his life, his upbringing, the devastation in the shipyard, the politics behind the Margaret Thatcher days of closing the mines. So why I raised Sting and the fact that he performed for us in Oshawa to highlight the issue of the sheer devastation, because we know what this means. It's not only about our 2,500 direct jobs in Oshawa, it's about the thousands of jobs that are tied into the supply base. It's about 24,000 jobs in total. The devastation of a community, the devastation of hopes and dreams for young families. So here's Sting who one can argue has no skin in the game, coming forward to help. And here's why I raise it. Because there's so many people that had so much skin in the game that decided to sit it out. So many politicians who were elected to lead that did just the opposite. And why do I say this? Because so many politicians today philosophically and fundamentally agree with General Motors' rights to close that plant than the right of workers to have good paying jobs. And that has to be the focus of this election as we are entering the October deadline. It has to be about working class people. It has to be about progressive politics. It has to be about jobs. So when I have Doug Ford in the legislature standing up saying that we're misleading people, we're giving false hope, we're doing a disservice to our members for fighting, all I can say to Doug Ford is, Doug, no, I'm not going to say it again. Yeah, that kind of didn't endear us to each other very much, and I'm quite comfortable with that. So politicians that perform a disservice by telling us to back off speaks volumes about their intention to lead. Because you see, in 2018, we had major disputes in the country, everywhere from Goderich, Ontario to Thunder Bay, where we had 55 women on strike in the health center, where we had doctors saying that we could train a monkey to do those jobs. Everything from scabs in Goderich, Ontario to scabs in Gander, Newfoundland that work for Kansas-based right-to-work companies. So we've mobilized hundreds and hundreds of our members to throw the scabs out of Goderich, throw the scabs out of Thunder Bay, throw the scabs out of Gander to create uniform, scab-free environments. And based on the politics and right-wing populism, we better all understand in this room we're going to be facing with that a lot more. We put out a video in Gander. It was called Meet the Scabs. Boy, I get a lot of negative press, but that was a beauty. As if somehow the scabs had more rights to those jobs than our members that were locked out and on the picket line. So anytime I have to defend our union's position by exposing the scabs, then we are going to expose the scabs. We are going to be very aggressive as to the fact that we need legislation from coast to coast to coast that prevents them from undermining our collective bargaining ability. The last date of importance, and I realize I only have a few minutes, was February the 25th, 2019. That's the date that General Motors called and said, let's get to the bargaining table. Because with the paid advertising, we had over 81 million views here in Canada. 81 million. GM was #1 in sales in Canada in 2017, 2018. In the month of February, they were #4. Sales in Canada in vehicles have dropped 4 to 5% since November of last year. GM sales have dropped 15%. So I raised this because it was the support of Canadians, I believe, that is making the difference. Canada is a very important market to General Motors, so we need to find a short-term solution, and ultimately we need to find a long-term solution. And we're at the bargaining table. Is it going to be a different operations in the short term? The answer is yes. Is it about maintaining the footprints? The answer is yes. So those politicians who were open and arrogant and disrespectful to our members, that said we should fold, we should throw in the towel and bargain the best deal, my message to them today is, think of what we could have accomplished if you had the drive, the political will, and the principles to stand with us in this fight. Thank you all very much here today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. So now je vous inviterai peut-être, notre prochain invité va parler en français. Il vient de Montréal, de ma ville. Je suis très contente de l'avoir avec nous aujourd'hui. Il a beaucoup marqué l'actualité au Québec dans les derniers mois. C'est Dominique Champagne, connu comme auteur et metteur en scène. Il s'est fait beaucoup remarquer comme leader de l'environnement au Québec dans les derniers mois. En décembre, il a lancé le Pacte pour la transition, qui mobilise les citoyens pour répondre à l'urgence, d'abord dans la lutte au réchauffement climatique. Son objectif, que son ambitieux pacte écologique obtienne 1 million de signatures. Bienvenue, Dominique.
Good morning, dear fellow Canadians. Yeah, you can switch for those who need. I'm going to do it all in French. Le 22 août 2018, une jeune Suédoise de 15 ans, Greta Thunberg, entamait une grève pour le climat. Elle allait devenir, en quelques mois, la plus haute autorité morale sur cette terre en matière de lutte au réchauffement climatique. Le 10 septembre 2018, à San Francisco, Antonio Guterres, secrétaire général des Nations unies, lance un appel à la société civile du monde entier. Il déclare que pour répondre à l'urgence climatique, il nous reste 2 ans pour agir, sous peine de conséquences désastreuses. Le 8 octobre 2018, un mois plus tard, en Corée du Sud, le groupe d'experts intergouvernemental sur l'évolution du climat, le GIEC, déclare que pour limiter le réchauffement planétaire à 1,5 degrés centigrades, il faudra modifier rapidement, radicalement et de manière inédite tous les aspects de la société. Ce qu'on ne dit pas, c'est que la situation est pire, bien pire que ce qu'on peut imaginer. Un mois plus tard, le 7 novembre dernier, à Montréal, répondant à l'appel, plus de 400 scientifiques, artistes et personnalités publiques lancent le Pacte pour la transition, qui invite tous les citoyens de ce pays à faire leur juste part pour répondre à l'urgence, chacun à la hauteur de ses moyens. En échange de quoi, on exige des gouvernements, des politiques et des investissements qui nous engagent collectivement dans une transition juste de notre économie, à la hauteur du défi posé par la science. Pendant que la science nous dit qu'il faut laisser dans le sous-sol 80% des ressources connues en énergie fossile, après que la NASA nous ait révélé qu'il y a assez de pétrole dans les sables bitumineux de l'Alberta pour que ça soit game over pour le climat, le 7 décembre dernier, 6 mois après avoir pris la décision d'acheter le pipeline Trans Mountain pour la somme de 4,5 milliards de dollars, le gouvernement du Canada ouvre toute grande la porte à l'idée qu'Ottawa subventionne l'achat de 7000 wagons-citernes pour faciliter la distribution du pétrole de l'Ouest sur un territoire où le transport par train du pétrole a causé la mort de 47 personnes en juillet 2013. Pendant que les scientifiques du monde entier implorent de réduire de moitié les émissions de gaz à effet de serre d'ici 2030 et de 95 ou 100% d'ici 2050, le 25 janvier dernier, l'Office national de l'énergie du Canada annonce que la production de pétrole des sables bitumineux pourrait augmenter de près de 75% d'ici 2040. Nous sommes à la croisée des chemins et ça ne peut plus continuer comme ça. Catherine Potvin, une des rédactrices du Pacte pour la transition, une des plus hautes autorités scientifiques en matière de réchauffement climatique au Canada, après un travail rigoureux qui a réuni plus d'une centaine de scientifiques d'un océan à l'autre, coast to coast, affirme dans sa proposition Dialogue pour un Canada vert qu'il est humainement, technologiquement et économiquement possible de décarboniser notre économie. Devant ce défi posé par la connaissance et par la raison, avec les moyens que nous avons, quand les rapports les plus experts nous disent qu'il nous reste 10 à 12 ans pour agir, pour tenter d'éviter le pire, je vous pose la question comme je me la pose. Comme se la posent des dizaines, des centaines de milliers d'étudiants qui ont pris la rue le 15 mars dernier, au Québec, au Canada et partout dans le monde. Qu'est-ce qu'on fait maintenant? Comment saurons-nous imposer le respect aux lobbies puissants qui ont tout intérêt à ce que la production de pétrole et de gaz continue de croître en ce pays? Comment opérer les changements radicaux qui s'imposent, en toute justice, pour ceux qui n'encaissent pas les dividendes à la fin du mois? Non, ça ne peut pas continuer comme ça. Oui, les consciences s'éveillent. Oui, la mobilisation augmente. Ces derniers mois, on a imposé l'urgence climatique à l'agenda. Plus de 360 municipalités au Québec ont signé une déclaration d'urgence climatique où on reconnaît le problème. Mais on l'a vu avec les deux derniers budgets de Québec et d'Ottawa la semaine dernière. L'alerte de la science est ignorée. Les revendications légitimes pour une économie viable sont ignorées ou trop faibles. Les politiques et les investissements ne suivent pas à la hauteur du défi à relever dans l'urgence où on se trouve. Je suis ici ce matin à Ottawa pour dire au gouvernement du Canada que chaque jour, il y a dégradation de la terre que nous habitons. Chaque jour davantage, à une vitesse folle, qu'il y a effondrement de la biodiversité, que des êtres humains souffrent et meurent du dérèglement du climat. Et que c'est le temps de paniquer. It's time to panic. Parce qu'on n'est pas en train de gagner la lutte contre les intérêts qui ont avantage à ce que ça continue comme ça. On nourrit encore l'espoir que si on est assez nombreux, la démocratie va enclencher un rapport de force et nous entraîner vers le changement qui s'impose. La démocratie a besoin de nous, oui. Les chefs de nos gouvernements ont besoin de nous pour que collectivement on prenne résolument, au nom de l'intérêt public, au nom du bien commun et de la suite du monde, le virage qui va nous orienter vers un monde viable. Je suis inquiet de l'indifférence et de l'ignorance qui règne. Je ne suis pas là pour juger personne, je ne suis pas là pour faire la morale ou pour culpabiliser qui que ce soit, mais je dis qu'on peut faire mieux, qu'on doit faire mieux. Se mettre rapidement, maintenant, en mode solution. Créer un mouvement, une communauté de sens et de valeurs où nous serons tous unis pour le climat. Je vous pose la question comme je la pose. Dans quel monde est-ce qu'on veut vivre? Et à qui appartient-il d'en décider? Le temps des petits pas, des petites batailles, des petites victoires est fini. Il faut exiger l'impossible et voir grand. Et ça signifie passer de la parole aux actes maintenant. Vous savez pourquoi la jeunesse africaine ne se mobilise pas pour le climat ces temps-ci? Parce que penser le climat, c'est un privilège. Un privilège que nous avons. Alors, je fais appel à notre humanisme, à la raison scientifique, oui, mais à notre cœur. Je fais appel à notre sens commun, aux hommes et aux femmes de bonne volonté, que l'on se rassemble autour des valeurs sacrées qui nous sont communes, à tout le monde. La qualité de l'eau qu'on boit, la qualité de l'air qu'on respire, la qualité de la terre dont on se nourrit, de l'atmosphère où on vit tout le monde, et qu'on se rassemble, et qu'on s'enligne, non pas vers un monde qui se dégrade chaque jour de plus en plus, mais vers un monde viable, vers une économie soutenable qui respecte les limites des ressources de la planète qu'on partage. Face à l'urgence climatique, faisons notre juste part, chacun à la hauteur de nos moyens. Et avec la force du nombre, exigeons des politiques à la hauteur du défi que la science nous incite à relever. Je vous invite, pour ceux qui ont des téléphones, des tablettes, à vous rendre sur le site lepacte.ca, lepacte.ca. Et je vous invite à signer le pacte et à faire signer le pacte. Merci.
Merci, Dominique. Next up, Childcare advocate Sharon Gregson is the provincial spokesperson for the successful $10 a day childcare campaign in British Columbia.
It was November 9th, 2018, at a neighborhood house in East Vancouver when childcare advocacy in BC got very real. It was on that date that our NDP Premier, John Horgan, flanked by several of his cabinet ministers and a Green Party MLA and a federal Liberal MP, together announced the launch of the $10 a day childcare prototype sites in British Columbia. For the childcare advocates in the room, some who have been at it for 40 years, it was like the culmination of their life's work. And for the Premier, it was obviously a very joyful announcement. Childcare in British Columbia is becoming a very good news story. So you should know that in BC, 10 a day is both a plan for the design of a new public childcare system, and it's also a successful campaign, with 10 a day being the brand that's recognized across the province. And the announcement in November really has a backstory, back to BC Budget 2018, when our fabulous Finance Minister, Carol James, announced $1 billion for childcare, $1 billion over 3 years. More than twice what the previous government had been spending. And it's had an immediate impact. So for the families of 50,000 children in our province, they are now paying lower monthly childcare fees because of that initiative. And for low and middle income families, they are having their monthly fees reduced even further through a super subsidy. There's a commitment to 24,000 new licensed childcare spaces, which is the most difficult to deliver on. And for early childhood educators, who are some of the most chronically underpaid professionals in our communities, they are seeing their first publicly funded wage enhancement in a generation. So it is not an exaggeration at all for me to tell you today that we have seen more good news on childcare in our province in the last 12 months than in the preceding 16 years put together. And yet that hasn't been enough. The general public and the media have been very unhappy that government wasn't delivering on its campaign promise of $10 a day childcare. And so when I was interviewed after all those announcements and tried to explain that they were steps in the right direction, the headlines still screamed, government not delivering on $10 a day childcare, because that has become the measure of success for childcare in our province. And so when our Premier made the announcement in November that he was delivering on the 10 a day prototype sites, there was an enormous amount of good media across the province. In every community, nothing but good news, and it's still reverberating to this day. So mothers like Erin were quoted as saying, with high housing costs and crazy daycare prices, life has been such a struggle, and 10 a day will be life-changing for her family. Moms like Catherine who said, oh my God, I feel like my family has won the lottery. And moms like Micah who said, finally now my children can go to childcare and I can go back to work. So there are $10 a day prototype sites at 53 communities around our province, providing childcare, affordable 10 a day childcare to about 2,500 children in our province. So it's really happening. It's not a pipe dream. And for those cynics who said that it would never happen, clearly you have never met the BC childcare advocates. We are relentless. And we're a feminist collective. And we created the $10 a day childcare plan, and we worked with allies, both progressive and non-traditional. We built public support for public investment in childcare. We influenced a BC election, making childcare one of the top 3 issues in 2017. And we have given parents and educators hope that childcare can be done differently in our province. But we're very realistic. We know that there's chaos out there, and this is just year 1 of what needs to be a 10-year plan. And so we continue to build support And as of Monday night, there are now 54 municipal and regional governments in our province that have passed resolutions to support the $10 a day plan, 31 school districts, hundreds and hundreds of labor organizations, community groups, businesses have passed resolutions to support the plan, and thousands of individuals have signed the 10-a-day petition. Together, they represent far more than 2 million British Columbians. The reason that we continue to build momentum is that the fight is not over yet. We know that things have to be done differently for childcare. We have to move away from the market-based system to a public system. And we have to make sure that our government stops giving capital dollars to the for-profit sector for the expansion of corporate childcare. We will never have a public system while they continue to do that. So as we think about a public system, we think about growing childcare the same way we grow schools and hospitals and transportation systems, because childcare is part of community infrastructure, and it needs to be funded that way. So the lessons learned from British Columbia is that it's not enough to be unhappy with the status quo. It's not enough to have a good idea, and it's not enough to just talk to your friends about it. You have to convince your allies that you have a plan. You have to develop a concrete plan. You have to work with economists who'll do the cost-benefit analysis so that you've got credibility. You have to build public support in order to create political will. And so my personal lesson learned that I'll share with you today is to never miss an opportunity to get your message out. And so my message today is to Premier Horgan and his staff, who I know are presenting here at the Progress Summit. And that is, your leadership over the last year on the childcare issue has been exemplary. And now we need you to not just be bold, but to be bolder. We need you to think about building a public system of childcare in British Columbia and making it your legacy. That means childcare needs to not only be publicly funded, it needs to be publicly managed and publicly delivered. That is the only way that you will reach the goal of a quality, affordable, universal childcare system that benefits kids, women's equality, families and communities, and our economy. And Premier, I know you can do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Our final speaker in this section is held up in Washington fighting the damaging policies by Donald Trump. She is a rising star and a mentor to the class of newly elected progressives. Pramila Jayapal is a congresswoman for Washington's 7th District and co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
Hello, Progress Summit. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. I had really hoped to do so in person, but my duties here in Congress prevent me from being with you in person. But I have followed your work for many years, and I've even spoken to you before at this conference remotely, and I am so grateful for and inspired by the progressive movement that Broadbent Institute is building. At this moment in time, when people across the world are faced by so many similar challenges, challenges of inequality and the rise of intolerance and hate, climate change, the need to rejuvenate our democracies, it is more critical than ever that progressives join hands across borders. We are all up against the same tides of rising inequality across the world, unchecked corporate greed, and deeply disturbing forces of hate and intolerance. Those enabling white supremacy and nationalism are the same as those enabling anti-immigrant hate and those pushing to decimate public programs and transfer wealth to billionaires and the largest corporations. I know it can be exhausting sometimes, but we must not allow ourselves to be divided or distracted. Our work is to continue to build progressive power, to bring new voices to the table, and to create a world where all people have equality and justice. Do not mistake where we are. The pushback against our progress that we are seeing is precisely because we are making progress. And we are making progress because regular people everywhere are refusing to be silenced. Working people are reclaiming their power. We are all organizing with a bold, progressive vision for an interconnected world. And that is a vision that is winning. And if you doubt that this is a movement moment, just look at the results of the last election here in America, when from coast to coast, we elected progressives by motivating and mobilizing a diverse grassroots coalition of women, people of color, immigrants, and LGBTQ folks. And as a result, the U.S. House of Representatives is the most diverse and the most progressive people's house in the history of our country. And the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which I was so proudly recently elected to co-chair, is now the largest values-based caucus in Congress, with our members making up over 40% of the entire Democratic caucus. And our Democratic caucus has already held together in critical ways that benefit workers and the most vulnerable. We have said no to an immoral wall, no to taking federal workers hostage, and no to the anti-immigrant otherizing coming from the White House. At the same time, we are working hard to propose and pass a progressive agenda that is widely supported by Americans across the country, including in swing districts. An agenda that rejuvenates our democracy and gets money out of politics, passes sensible gun reforms, invests in infrastructure, addresses climate change, and fixes our broken immigration system, and yes, an agenda that defends our Constitution and holds accountable the current administration for its wrongdoings. So we've got a bold, progressive vision for America, and at the top of my to-do list is securing universal health care. And that's why last month, I, along with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, was proud to introduce the Medicare for All Act of 2019. And we did so with record support from 106 additional co-sponsors in the House of Representatives. And unlike earlier bills, our bill actually lays out a detailed plan that provides coverage for all Americans by bringing everyone into one streamlined health insurance system that reins in our rising healthcare costs and guarantees affordable and high-quality healthcare for everyone. We've looked very carefully towards Canada as we wrote this proposal, and I intend to soon visit you with a delegation of my colleagues. We have so much to learn from your own experience securing quality, public, single-payer health care. Now, I know it's a bold idea, and we're already seeing the insurance and pharma industries lining up against it. But I believe that we progressives understand clearly that no big change in society started with a small idea. And no big change was ever possible without the real energy of people fighting for it. And that's what we have right here. We have this right now. You have it right there in the room at your conference with the organizing you're doing, with the smart policy advocacy, and with the bold and courageous vision that you're putting forward. So don't stop and don't be distracted. Our region and indeed our world needs your work. In both America and in Canada, the people are with us. They are ready for change, they demand it, and they deserve it. Have a wonderful summit. May 1,000 flowers bloom for a giant, beautiful, progressive garden of ideas.
Waouh, sur ces très beaux mots de notre dernière invitée se conclut cette première discussion. Maintenant, nous allons avoir une discussion sur le populisme de droite. Et pour cela, j'invite sur la scène l'auteur, le journaliste et le chroniqueur Michael Corren.
So I assume it's my job to say, you three, come on. Good morning, everyone. So we have less than an hour to solve the issue of right-wing populism. So, we'll probably end early. There are no questions from the floor, unfortunately, but these three will be hanging around afterwards if you'd like to ask them anything. What I'm going to do, rather than give a formal introduction, I'm going to ask each